Yeah, we'll wait.
You guys take care of the ones that are not necessarily on the radar for Yeah, I see that.
Who's had car trouble, and she's trying to get here, and she's just a few minutes away. So if you will indulge us a little bit, we're going to wait a couple minutes on it.
Are you state representative?
Van?
Federally?
Yeah.
John Davidson, the Deputy Executive Director of Business Services. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, I'm Tracy Thurston. I'm the Senior Director of Financial Management.
I'm Jim Statler, Deputy Executive Director of Finance and Accounting and Single Family Lending and Servicing.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gibson. I'm a paralegal with our legal department and board liaison.
I'm Sam Thorner. I'm the General Counsel and Deputy Executive Director.
And I think I've met all of you at least virtually, so Winston Miller, Executive Director.
I'm Molly Tate. I'm the Managing Director of Communications and Marketing.
I'm Nicia Patterson. I'm in the Communications Department, and I'm behind the scenes and quiet normally.
I'm not normally quiet. I'm Wendy Smith. I am Deputy Executive Director over Housing Programs.
And I'm Kevin Field. I'm the Deputy Executive Director over Internal Audit.
Lauren Van Sickle, Deputy General Counsel.
Lydia Jefferson, IT.
Lydia is responsible for all this working today.
Don't put that much pressure on
Mike, with your permission, maybe we just go ahead and do the introductions to the members.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I did. This is, I guess, a little bit out of order with the agenda, but since we're sort of waiting a little bit here for us to be complete, two things I wanted to do to sort of, or actually three things I wanted to do to sort of start off that I'll do is one, to say welcome to all of you all and thank you all for all the work that you've done during your term in office, but particularly during the years that we've been here virtually. And this is the first time in over 2 years, I'm not going to count the exact months, I don't want to, that we've been doing this virtually, and it's so nice to be back together again, so we're appreciative of that. And I wanted to give a special welcome to Joe Belby, who is here for Commissioner Quarles today, and by virtue of HR 360, Commissioner Quarles is a new member of the Kentucky Housing Corporation Directors, and will be serving in that capacity, and will also be serving with the Rural Housing Trust Fund, which is new, and you'll hear more about that from Wendy and from me later on. But Joe, welcome to the board.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you. Commissioner Quarles, my boss, looks forward to learning more about this organization and doing what he can to help advance its mission.
Great. And since many of us in the room have not met each other again in person, I thought we'd take just a moment and do what we did with staff and let each of you all introduce yourselves. And Marilyn, can we start with you and we'll go around this way?
Start with me. I'm Marilyn Mason. I come from far east of Ashland, and I'm a real estate broker. I have my own company there, and my function here is to help represent the real estate practitioners.
I'm Matt Wingate. I'm attending as proxy on behalf of Secretary Knoll. I'm the Cabinet's, or with Cabinet for Economic Development. I'm the Cabinet's General Counsel, and I've been attending virtually for a few meetings, and still hoping to get brought up to pace with everyone else, where everyone else is at. But very interesting and happy to be here.
Good. Welcome.
I'm Steve Brunson. I'm Senior Managing Director with Rainstar Capital Group, and I'm in my second term on the board.
I'm Matt Stevens. I'm General Counsel at the Department for Local Government, proxy for Commissioner King.
Welcome.
I'm still Joe Bilby.
I haven't changed either. We all know the chair. Yep. Okay.
Hi, I'm Cassie Cannell. I'm Chief of Staff of the Finance Administration Cabinet. I'm proxy for Secretary Johnson, who's out of town today.
Now, Cassidy and I are both from Maysville, Kentucky, so don't say anything bad about it.
I'm Barry Knopfsinger. I represent manufactured housing on the board. My day job actually is to do work for a credit union out of Texas. Don't hold that against me there, but I actually work, my division actually does manufactured housing lending throughout the United States.
I'm Gail Lively. This is my second term on the board, and I represent instruction. I'm retired.
I'm Bruce Brown, retired from Kentucky Association of Community Action Agency, and I operated White County Community Action Agency for 40 plus years. And I'm from Somerset, Kentucky. I represent consumers. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Hinko. I'm retired from practicing law, from running a housing authority, and most recently from running a nonprofit that did research and advocacy on fair and affordable housing, and I represent the nonprofit housing providers. I'm retired from all that.
And my question is, how do we get this way? Because we were sitting on this side. Everybody else is retired over here.
This is it.
I could do 5 minutes of stand-up.
Okay.
Now, what would you do? Say, would you stand up, or?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I could do 2 minutes of tap dancing that cost my parents hundreds of dollars.
Well, welcome to all of you, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We do have a long agenda, and Ms. Burton can just join us. So thank you all for attending today's meeting. So Sam, can we confirm a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
And what about the press notice?
The press has been notified.
Okay. And public participation, is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak today? Okay. I also want to mention Commissioner of Agriculture, Ryan Quarles. Ryan was a seatmate of mine in the legislature. He and I were really good friends, and he's a fine young man. So we're glad to have him as a part of this board. Joe, we're glad to have you today. So, all right. I just want to say before we start, I want to thank the staff. This is a wonderful staff at Kentucky Housing Corporation. They do wonderful work. I've seen a lot of their work out in the field, and I'm just so impressed with the job that they do. And so I want the staff to know how much we appreciate them. With that, how about consideration and approval of the minutes? Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Does anyone have any questions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion that they be approved.
Steve, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'm on the
It's like you're on Zoom, Grace.
I'll second. Okay, Gail, okay, thank you, Gail. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, so David Stark, you're up.
All right.
And this is an inducement resolution for Beecher Phase 4.
Yes.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chairman. I may need to recuse from this one because in my private practice as an attorney, I represent an entity that has or until recently had a financial interest in Beecher Terrace. So Sam, if you think it's best, I'm going to step out of the room or whatever you want me to do to note the fact that I'm not going to be participating in this agenda.
I think that's fine. I don't know that you need to step out of the room.
I mean, aren't
But
we
it's-
public unless we go in closed session? So certainly you
Yeah.
can't miss it.
I'll just
You don't need to step out.
I'll pipe down.
So noted.
Thank you.
We'll note that in the minutes that you recuse yourself.
Thank you,
Fair
sir.
enough?
Yes, sir.
All right, David.
All right, so my first item, revised inducement resolution for Beecher Phase 4. Beecher Phase 4 is the fourth and final phase of the Beecher Terrace development in Louisville. This project is a HUD Choice Neighborhood Initiative project. The project originally received an inducement resolution from this board in the amount of $38 million back in August. However, higher than expected construction costs require an additional bond cap of $1.25 million to cover unexpected increases. This would raise the bond request to $39,250,000. This project involves new construction of 210 units, consisting of 89 one-bedroom units, 98 two-bedroom units, and 23 three-bedroom units at 980 West Liberty Street. The project will serve 210 households with affordable units serving populations ranging from 80% area median income down to as low as 30% AMI. It will also utilize local project-based vouchers. I'll note that as the financing for this project progresses, the board of directors must also authorize the issuance and sale of tax-exempt bonds through approval of a separate resolution. But with respect to this revised inducement resolution, KHC staff does recommend approval by the board of directors for this higher amount.
Does anyone have any questions of David on this resolution?
I just want to say that, you know, the Housing Authority has been really assiduous in making sure that, for instance, homeowners in the area are able to keep their homes through the homeownership, using Section 8 for homeownership, and provides a pathway to homeownership through the rental program. So, yeah, include it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Brown, a second by Ms. Hinko. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. David, go right ahead.
All right, next agenda item.
Come in, Ms. Burton, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Well, it's all right, you're perfectly okay. We're sorry you had car trouble. So, go ahead, David.
All right. So the last item was a revised inducement resolution. This is a final resolution for the project to Gateway on Broadway. This project might sound familiar. It was granted an inducement resolution back in May of last year for bond authority in the amount of $25 million. This final resolution is also still for $25 million. The board had previously approved the final resolution for this project back at their December meeting. However, that resolution did require that the bonds be issued by February 28th of this year. That bond issuance did not occur by that due date due to certain developer delays in obtaining approvals from its project equity provider, and the result of some staff turnover at PNC, the equity provider. But at this point, the development team has represented KHC staff that it is now ready to proceed to closing. They anticipate having all of the necessary approvals and being ready to proceed to closing this coming May. So we're bringing this back, have another final resolution passed. The project involves acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation of 116 units for elderly households located at 1405 West Broadway in Louisville. The project will serve 50 households at or below 30% area median income, 66 units at or below 50% AMI, and of the 116 units, 112 will be one bedroom with 4 two-bedroom units. KHC staff recommends approval from the board of this final resolutions for issuance of these bonds.
Any members have any questions of David? Yes, ma'am.
This project is a signature project entering into West Louisville in a building that has long been deteriorated. And I guess the only thing I'm concerned about is that we assign them more fees, even though not everything that delayed the February issuance was under their control. And also, the people that will be served are desperately needing this kind of housing. So I definitely agree with that. I wish we could revisit the fee issue for this. But that's not on the table right now.
No.
Thank you. Anyone else have? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Kathy, for those comments. Thank you, I thank you for those comments because this is a well-needed service or a development for that area. As you well know, the whole issue with West Louisville and the need for any type of positive improvement development is key. So I appreciate the fact that your comments and also doing the fee development. I'm with you on that. At a later time, maybe it's something that can include, a conversation. But I appreciate the fact that we are recognizing the fact for development that's in a positive mode for this in the Broadway.
Thank you. And David, can you tell us how far along is this project? Where are we?
They are ready to close on the financing, so we'll start shortly after that. It's my understanding.
Okay, so the property has not even been acquired officially yet?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Typically, that's not the case.
Yeah, this completes the capital stack, and then they'll have a closing with PNC and we go from there.
Okay, good.
What's the anticipated time of the project?
Well, typically a project like this, it would be started, it would be completed and placed in service within about 2 years. This is kind of a standard practice. This specific one, I don't know the exact schedule.
Very good, thank you.
Anybody else have any further questions? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion that this project be approved.
I make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Motion by Ms. Burton, second by Ms. Hinkle. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, David, we'll start talking about personal service contracts.
All right, yes, we'll make our way through some of these. So the next 3 agenda items are somewhat related. All renewals of personal service contracts with multi-vendor program departments. The first item is authorization to renew a personal service contract with flip on page 2 bar with Gibson Consulting for market analysis services. This contract is an amount not to exceed $40,000. In our administration of the low-income housing tax credit program and various other HUD programs, KHC must adhere to strict performance and reporting requirements, which necessitate a variety of market analysis services. Last year, KHC issued an RFP, and Gibson Consulting was selected by a review committee to provide market analysis services. Kentucky Housing Corporation has the option to renew the contract for 2 consecutive years following the initial term, and this would be the first renewal of the contract. So with that, I'll note that we recommend the board approve this renewal in an amount not to exceed $40,000 for fiscal year 2024.
Does anyone have any questions of David about this contract? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
I'll make a motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. David, go right ahead.
Sure. So the next agenda item is authorization to renew a personal service contract with Bowditch Property Advisors. Like the last contract, this is for market analysis services, but also as part of our RFP, this vendor responded to also provide rent comparability studies in connection with some of KHC's tenant assistance programs. And so therefore, this contract amount is not to exceed $60,000. Again, this occurred in a RFP process last year. Valbridge was selected through that process and is available. KHC has the option to renew the contract for 2 consecutive years, and this will be the first renewal of the contract. So with that, I'll recommend approval of the Valbridge Property Advisors contract in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for fiscal year 2024.
Does anyone have any questions of David in regard to this contract? Not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. David, you're ready.
Right, and lastly, on my part, authorization to renew a personal service contract with Value Tech Realty Services for market analysis services, also in an amount not to exceed $40,000. Again, this is in connection with KHC's administration of the low-income housing tax credit program and other programs. This contract also resulted from an RFP back in 2022, and KHC has the option to renew for 2 consecutive years. And this will be the first renewal of this contract. As with the other contracts, KHC recommends approval by this board of a resolution to authorize KHC to renew this personal service contract in an amount not to exceed $40,000 for fiscal year 2024.
Anyone have any questions of David on this, in regard to this contract? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. Appreciate your hard work. All right, Jim Statman. Jim, I think you've got a few personal service contracts here too.
I got a whopper of one right here.
Yeah. Out of $5 million in personal service contracts, I think this guy's getting cheated. So, go ahead, Jim.
Afternoon, everybody. Yes, this is requesting authorization to renew a personal service contract with DLX Group LLC for arbitrage rebate calculation services. KHC requires services to perform arbitrage rebate calculation services on non-purpose investments. It basically prevents CFOs, creative CFOs from investing tax-exempt proceeds of tax-exempt bonds in taxable investments and making a little money on the arbitrage. So to keep us all honest, the CFOs honest, we have to have an arbitrage rebate calculation done on tax-exempt bonds every 5 years to make sure that is not the case. And we have one remaining tax-exempt bond left in our portfolio, and it's going to mature in fiscal 24, and it costs $1,250 to do this service. And so rather than have three arbitrage companies send in a proposal for a $1,250 contract, we did get permission from the Secretary or the Department of Finance, Finance Cabinet, to renew this contract for 1 year without having to go out for proposal. So management recommends approval of personal service contract with DLX Group to arbitrage rebate calculation services for fiscal 24 in the amount not to exceed $1,250.
Does anyone have any questions of Jim on this contract? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Jim, you're still up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're requesting now authorization to renew a personal service contract with Pro LLP for audit of our financial statements. KHC is charged with the responsibility of having a comprehensive audit performed on the financial books and records. at least annually in order to comply with certain bond indenture agreements, annual contribution contract with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and other statutory requirements. In 2021, KHC issued a request for proposal for audit services. Excuse me. KHC staff evaluated the responses and selected Crow LLP to conduct the corporation's audit for the fiscal year end 2022. We have the option to renew the contract for 2 consecutive years following the original proposed solicitation and evaluation process. This will be the second renewal of the contract, so we'll go out for RFP next year. KHC staff recommends approval by the Board of Directors of KHC of a resolution authorizing KHC to renew the personal service contract with Crow in an amount not to exceed $161,250 for fiscal year end 2024. And full disclosure, and it has been the case for my 10 years here at Kentucky Housing. My son is a principal at Crow. He's a partner that works out of the New York City office. And we have cleared the independence issue, any potential independence or conflict issues, both internal here and Crow has done the same on their side. So, but full disclosure, that relationship is there.
And the Louisville office would...
Louisville office and Indianapolis offices do the work. Yes,
Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody have any questions, Jim, on this contract? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Lively, do I have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Authorization to enter into a personal service contract with various real estate agencies and brokers across the Commonwealth. KHC requests approval to renew personal service contracts with various agencies and/or brokers to provide as-needed real estate services for the marketing and disposition of Kentucky Housing Corporation's real estate-owned single-family housing portfolio for fiscal 2024. Following an RFP process in 2023, KHC selected various real estate agencies and/or brokers as listed on the attachment to provide marketing and disposition services for KHC's REO single-family housing portfolio for fiscal year 2024. We have the option to renew these contracts for 2 consecutive years after this. KHC staff recommends approval of the list of real estate brokers that's attached to this resolution or agenda item for a total amount for the fiscal year not to exceed $400,000. These individual contracts are typical real estate sale contracts between us as owner, KHC as owner of the real estate, which we acquire via foreclosure, and normally calls for a 6% sales commission like a traditional real estate service contract.
Anybody have any questions of Jim in regard to this contract? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
I have a motion. I have a second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is my fourth and final for everybody's approval. This is the request authorization to renew contracts with Kentuckiana Property Preservation LLC, Paid to Buy Realty LLC, and Wolverine Real Estate Services Incorporated to provide property preservation and protection services for KHC single-family default portfolio. Kentucky Housing Corporation requests approval to renew these contracts for property preservation and protection and/or inspection services for the single-family default portfolio for fiscal year end 2024. Pursuant to terms of FHA, Rural Housing, Veterans Administration, Fannie Mae Insurance, KHC is required to perform certain property preservation and/or inspection services on single-family loans when a property is vacant, delinquent, or in foreclosure. Securing contracts with these property preservation companies will allow KHC's loan servicing department staff to respond quickly to reports of vacant properties, maintain proper inspection, lawn maintenance and winterization schedules, and order necessary repairs to properties, thereby preserving the value of the property and protecting the interests of the corporation. KHC is reimbursed through insurance claims process, primarily from the insurers of the loans, not the insurers of the property. So FHA reimburses us, VA does, RHS and Fannie Mae reimburses us for most of these costs that we incur, and which brings we front it, get the services prepared or taken care of, and then get reimbursement when we file the claims with the various insurance or guarantee corporations. Following the request for proposal process in 2021, we selected, KHC selected Kentuckiana Property Preservation LLC, Paid to Buy Realty LLC, and Wolverine Real Estate Services Inc. KHC has the option to renew the personal service contract for 2 consecutive years following the initial terms of the contract. This is the second renewal, so these will go out for proposal again next year. KHC staff recommends approval of these contracts to Kentuckiana Property Preservation in an amount not to exceed $800,000, paid by Realty LLC in an amount not to exceed $250,000, and Wolverine Real Estate Services in an amount not to exceed $500,000 for property preservation, protection, and inspection services for the single-family default portfolio for fiscal year 2024. And again, most of these funds are reimbursed, and it looks like, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But when I got here, these contracts exceeded $3 million. And so the portfolio is performing much better, and circumstances are much better. We're just entering the Great Recession, but so they're big numbers, but it's part of the process of servicing single family.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody have any questions of Jim on this vitally important contract? Jim, I do have one question. How many houses would you have in this queue for at any one time?
We have to inspect the houses if they're 30, if they go down 30 days. And so our 30-day delinquency portfolio is 3.5–4% of about 1,200. So there's a lot of, the loans are, if they're in bankruptcy, if they're in the process of foreclosure, and if they're 30 or 60, 30, if they're delinquent, they have to be contractually delinquent, we have to make sure that they're occupied. So there's probably, between 900 and 1,000 a month that these folks have to go out and inspect.
And you have a team from here that goes and inspects them as well, is that right?
No, we hire, these folks have a geographic concentration, and they're able to do it, and they have to send a report every day, or every month of what they see, photographs and the like. And if it's vacant, they have to secure it, and put locks on it. If it has been damaged, then we have to board it up, or we have to rehab it so that we can convey it to HUD and ultimately do the foreclosure.
Any further questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So how long, what is the normal length of time that you are, before you go in to take action?
Well, as soon as, for inspection, it starts 30 days delinquency.
Okay.
And then when the property becomes, or the borrower becomes, I think it's 5 months down, then we can initiate foreclosure action.
5 months.
5 months, I believe that's the case, and if not, I'll
So when you get to the foreclosure point, then what's that?
then that foreclosure process will take 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
And so the loan will be down close to 9, 10, 11 months by the time we actually get to the court.
Okay.
Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Jim, thank you for your hard work, and it's finally nice to meet you in person, so.
Same here, thank you for your...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to take it, since we're between people, at the end of this, and maybe this is what John does, do we have a percent of Black-owned businesses from these personal service contracts, including the realtors?
So the realtor list that's in your packet identifies male, female, and minority participation.
Yeah, I just meant there's a lot of contracts, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have focused on the realtor, but just in general, the percent of contracts we award to Black-owned businesses.
We can get that, and certainly we do follow our procurement process, the legal, we go through that, and we do track that, and we actually award additional points and scoring for minority and women-owned businesses, and after we pursue it.
Right, and I wanted to ask when no one was up there.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions before we proceed? So, Lauren, you're up next. Lauren Van Sickle. She's going to talk about the personal service contract with attorneys, right?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm before you for Kentucky Housing Corporation request authorization to renew personal service contracts with Sterling and Reddick, PLLC, and with Septimus Taylor, PFC, for fiscal year end 2024 for legal representation and foreclosure and bankruptcy proceedings on behalf of KHC. We did an initial request for proposals in 2021, and KHC selected these firms for legal representation. We have the option to renew this contract for 2 consecutive years following the original proposal and solicitation. So this will be the second renewal this year, and we'll need to go out for a request for proposal again next year. So staff recommends approval by the Board of Directors of a resolution authorizing KHC to renew personal service contracts for legal representation for foreclosure and bankruptcy proceedings with Sterling Reddick, PLLC, in an amount not to exceed $1,200,000, and Septimus Taylor, PSC, in an amount not to exceed $750,000 for fiscal year end 2024. Also, please note that a majority of these funds expended for the loan servicing legal representation is actually reimbursable to KHC by the insuring agencies.
Does anyone have any questions of Lauren in regard to this contract?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. Do these firms bill by the hour, or is there a retainer arrangement? How's it work?
The insuring agencies allow certain amounts to be reimbursed based upon if it's a foreclosure action and what all is involved within that foreclosure action or a bankruptcy proceeding.
So it's project-based, not hours-based.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this contract.
Make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
John Davidson.
Good afternoon, Chair Dillon and members of the board. I am here to talk about Agenda Item 13, Resolution 21 in your packet. An authorization to enter a personal service contract with Hannah Resource Group LLC for HR consulting services. Kentucky Housing Corporation request approval to enter into this personal service contract with Hannah Resource Group to provide consulting services for continued compensation evaluation and planning, succession planning for fiscal year end 2024. Following a request for proposal process in 2023, Kentucky Housing Corporation selected HRG to provide human resource consulting services. KHC has the option to renew the contract for 2 consecutive years following the RFP solicitation and evaluation process, both of which those preceding years will come back to the board every year. Staff recommends, KHC recommends the approval by the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation of a resolution authorizing the corporation to enter into a personal service contract with Hannah Resource Group LLC, HRG, for an amount not to exceed $21,600 for human resource consulting services for fiscal year ending 2024.
Any members have any questions of John in regard to this personal service contract? If not, we'll entertain a motion that it be approved.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
And thank you for meeting me this morning.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Sam, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kentucky Housing Corporation is the sponsor of a 401A defined contribution pension plan. KHC's executive team serves as the trustees of the plan, and in that capacity will require investment advice from properly licensed investment advisors. In 2021, we issued a request for proposals for investment advisor services. Staff evaluated the responses and selected Ballast, Inc. KHC has the option to renew this twice, and this will be the second renewal of the contract. KHC staff recommend approval by the board of a resolution authorizing KHC to renew a personal service contract with Ballast, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $16,000 for fiscal year 24.
Any members have any questions of Sam on this contract? If not, I'll entertain a motion that it be approved.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you. Short-lived, right? All right, Wendy Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. I promise this is the last contract. So you're almost done approving all of these. I am before you to recommend approval of yet another personal service contract. Like many of the others, this is a renewal. This is the second renewal. So after, if provided you all approve it, we will then have to go back out to RFP. And I'll give you a little context. So when a lot of the pandemic assistance programs were passed through federal legislation, KHC received just this outsized number of funds for new activities and new uses. And we knew in 2021 we were going to need help, getting all of this implemented. One of the ways we sought that help was we did an RFP for housing consulting and services and selected a couple of providers that way. One of them was Hairgrove Consulting LLC, which is a women-owned consulting agency out of Louisville. And the primary way that Hairgrove Consulting has worked with us is in our housing choice voucher program, so Section 8 voucher program. We got, through pandemic funding, 257 new emergency housing vouchers, which were vouchers geared toward helping getting people experiencing homelessness housed, hopefully permanently. And those vouchers, as well as another bucket of vouchers called mainstream vouchers, which are for people experiencing homelessness who also have a disability, those two buckets were almost 600 new vouchers for us out of an existing portfolio of about 4,500. So a pretty significant increase at a time where there's a very low supply of available units. In addition, and I think this was the right thing for HUD to do, but there was an added requirement that our voucher program staff, which is here at KHC, work with what's called the Homelessness Continuum of Care, which is also at KHC and across partners across 118 counties. So HUD was saying, yes, you get these new great vouchers, but you must craft a partnership with homeless providers and your homeless system of care, and in some cases, for some of these vouchers, also with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. So that is a great and important coordination, but it also means more time and kind of a different level of coordination and complexity to the process and the referral process and information tracking. That is the main area that Hairgrove Consulting has worked with us on. Helped us with some kind of management tools. There's something called Smart Sheets that has just made it a lot easier for us to coordinate across partners and keep track of where a voucher is and how close it is to leasing up. So with all of that, I am recommending the third and final renewal of this contract. It's not to exceed $250,000. That's not an annual amount, that's the over 3-year amount, just so you all know. But we are keeping it at that because we want to keep that kind of running balance. That's what we originally approved. It is funded through the admin for these various programs that Hairgrove Consulting is working on.
Does anyone have any questions of Wendy regarding, yes?
Just to say, what a great job that was done.
Thanks.
Just everything. The new vouchers, the assistance money. We moved into this new crisis of environmental disasters without really meeting in person and saying all the stuff you did during COVID was amazing, right?
Right.
Amazing.
Thanks.
And well appreciated. So this is my chance to say it.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Kathy. I feel like having the right staff in the right places and strong partnerships is what made it possible for us to do that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? And Wendy, let me say that on behalf of all of us, thank your staff for the hard work. It was an amazing chore, and you all did a great job doing it. So we certainly appreciate it.
Thanks. I will say I feel like Kentucky punched above its weight in a lot of areas during the pandemic, so I am proud.
I think you did too. So does anybody have any questions? Further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
I make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Wendy, you're going to give us an overview of the recovery efforts in eastern and western Kentucky. And I just want to, for those new board members or folks that haven't heard this before, when the tornadoes hit in western Kentucky, at 7 o'clock the next morning, Kentucky Housing Corporation had boots on the ground. And I called Winston at about 7:30, and Wendy was already at the emergency management group. So I just want to thank Winston and Wendy for their efforts that morning of getting people out to those areas as quick as possible. Also, when the floods happened in eastern Kentucky, the same thing happened. They had boots on the ground immediately. So we certainly appreciate all the hard work that Kentucky Housing did during that time and has been doing all along. So go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, thank you. So what I want to do, and for some of you all, you will have heard some of what I'm going to share, but before David Stark presents to you changes that we're recommending to our low-income housing tax credit qualified allocation plan, those changes are in response to us trying to use our resources strategically in response to the disasters. I wanted to give you all kind of this bigger picture of what we've been doing and what our role is. Now, I will say for us and for most state agencies, other than Kentucky Emergency Management, we are new to figuring out what is our role, how do we do this, how do we partner, where do we come in. And so Mike is generous in his praise, but I feel like we spent a long time just showing up and being around trying to figure out what we're supposed to do. What's also a challenge for KHC is, as a quasi, we're self-supporting, right? And we don't have a disaster cost center, at least not yet. That could change, but so everything that we've been doing is kind of unfunded, if you will, and Jim always wants us to be watching our bottom line, and every hour I'm spending on disasters, I think about that, but it's still very important, and I think we're about to have some really meaningful roles, so I'm going to give you all this kind of the context and then talk about recent stuff that's happened. As Mike said, we have been involved in meeting with other state agencies from the very beginning. That includes Kentucky Emergency Management, of course, the Governor's Office, DLG, Public Protection Cabinet, Transportation, Environment and Energy, Cabinet for Health and Family Services. For a while, we were meeting 3 times a week, all the time, really to coordinate and talk about what was going and respond to different issues. We also have had regular communications with our HUD field office, some with FEMA, and early on with the American Red Cross. That tapers as their time on the ground ends, about 90 to 120 days after the disaster. We've had lots of meetings and events with our nonprofit partners, really trying to understand what they're seeing, how we can be helpful to them. We've also begun some new partnerships. Barry's been part of some of this with manufactured housing, trying to think about how off-site built homes might be part of the solution, particularly in eastern Kentucky. So that kind of falls under communication and coordination and partnership. In terms of outreach and inventory, we called all of our Section 8 tenants in the 2 areas to make sure they were okay, to figure out if they had needed to get rehoused. We also called all of our multifamily apartment complexes to find out were they damaged, because if they were damaged, sometimes we've got to report that to HUD or to the IRS. We also need to find out, do we need to help you relocate your folks? We also inventoried if they weren't damaged. In that same conversation, we said, do you have any available units? And we built an online database, first for Western Kentucky and then for Eastern Kentucky, of just vacant apartments in our properties, because we are allowed to extend some flexibilities. We don't worry about your income. If you've been hit by a disaster, you can move into one of our properties. We are allowed to be more flexible right after a federally declared disaster. So that inventory was something that FEMA and HUD and the Red Cross shared a whole lot. We also looked at our own programs to try to extend some flexibility to folks who already had money from us. They already had money to repair a house, to build a house, what have you. And so we were able to do that. We were able to waive, again, that income eligibility or other, like if the household was too big or too small for the unit size, we could still let them move in because they had been a victim of a disaster. We looked at shifting some of our existing grant money. Let's say you had money to build houses, but you really wanted to repair houses. As long as the organization had some experience in that, we allowed that flexibility and just rewrote some grant agreements. to allow for that. We also allowed a higher dollar amount per home for home repair. We usually capped it at about $20,000 to $25,000, and we let it go up to $40,000 in the disaster areas. So just basic repairs to keep a home habitable. Just trying to be really flexible. We also took on, Dawson Springs Public Housing Authority lost a bunch of units. They were just destroyed. When that happens, HUD converts those units into housing choice vouchers. But that Public Housing Authority does not run housing choice vouchers. So we got those vouchers and we went out to Dawson Springs and basically did kind of a fair to let people sign up, get a voucher, try to find a place to use their voucher, which is proving very difficult if they want to stay, around Dawson Springs because so many units got destroyed. Okay, so that's program flexibility. We also provided some of our discretionary money to support nonprofits that we know are going to be and are already key to recovery and are part of their long-term recovery groups. That's a disaster term I never knew about, but we have several of our existing partners who already use our funds and who are playing, like us, unfunded roles in disaster recovery. And we want them to stay sustainable and be around when the rest of the disaster money, hits the ground. So we have granted out a total of $480,000 of our own discretionary money, so money we earned probably from home mortgages. We granted that out, very flexible. It's just operating support to keep them going. And just to give them that wiggle room while they're, because for some of them, they're not building, we pay them to build houses. Well, they might not be building a house for several months right after the disaster. They're just trying to help people, get safe and muck out an existing home and that kind of stuff. So we did that, almost $500,000 in grants. Okay, now let's get to more recent stuff. So in terms of implementing housing programs, which is what we've been hungry to do, we've been partnering ongoingly with Department for Local Government. In particular, relatively soon, we expect to release a tax-exempt bond and 4% housing credit NOFA, Notice of Funds Available, for multifamily projects in Western Kentucky. David Stark's going to talk more about that. But that's to address the need. A lot of multifamily and single-family rental units were lost in the tornadoes. And then in Eastern Kentucky, and this will actually cover both disasters, but we're most urgently focused on Eastern Kentucky, the Rural Housing Trust Fund that the legislature just created and then funded by creating more flexibility with some of the SAFE funds. SAFE funds were dollars appropriated by the legislature for each disaster. Some of those were reprogrammed and given more flexibility. $10 million for West Kentucky, $10 million for East Kentucky for housing repair and housing development, single family and multifamily. So the Rural Housing Trust Fund will have $20 million, again, 10 for each disaster region. We will have an advisory committee that needs to get established. Winston's going to talk about that. And we have been meeting with partners, and our staff has met several times, to draft kind of a recommended program design built on our existing programs so that it will look familiar to our partners, it will have more flexibilities, so that they, can digest it, and we want their feedback before we put it out as an application, and before we bring it to the advisory committee for them to review. But that's really exciting, and our hope is that that money can be a bridge between the FEMA money and philanthropic money that's on the ground right now, Team Kentucky money that's on the ground right now, and the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery money that DLG is going to be accepting applications for soon. This money is going to be really flexible and hopefully help keep people housed, get their homes fixed up, get homes built in that interim. So that's the big stuff. We are very new to this again. We're learning a lot. I think from the tornadoes to the floods, we learned a lot even between the two of those. We feel like we have a really meaningful role. We have played a meaningful role, and we have a meaningful role to play going forward. I welcome any questions y'all might want to ask.
Well,
Go ahead,
I do not speak for Kentucky Housing Corporation when I say, especially to everyone in state government, we don't have a Department of Housing. We have Kentucky Housing Corporation. You don't fund these large approaches out of state funds and assign that kind of responsibility. We don't have a 10-year plan for housing. We don't have that. It's insane that these folks have to become a floor wax and a dessert topping all in 1 week. It just needs to be more, housing is really important. And it should be recognized at a state level, and my opinion, should be housed with Kentucky Housing Corporation with funded staff from the state to expand and have a really universal view of how we are going to approach housing in all its facets here in Kentucky. Thank you. Mic drop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait just a minute. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Wendy, thank you so much. All right. Okay, Barry, Program and Policy Committee.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a little bit of the time instead of asking a question. I do have a question for you, Wendy. How long have you been here? In your role?
In this role, 3
In
years.
this role? 3 years. 4
Yeah,
years.
4, maybe 4 now, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if it's because of you, but she's been through probably a pandemic, a floods, tornadoes, everything else.
Everything.
And it's incredible. One thing, and Winston, I'm actually talking to you at this point, you know this. People are brought to an area for a reason. I don't know, and you've had a lot of people in my tenure here that have been in your role, and a lot of good people. I mean, strong people. You know the people I'm talking about. I don't know if they could have done the same thing you did because of your energy level. The balls that you keep up in the air are amazing that you watch. And the one thing I'm noticing, and I would have been pushing a lot more on this, is you're capturing it. Because again, we've got to have a blueprint going forward, because as you found out, you're creating the manual as you go.
Yes.
You have no idea what's going on here. So from that standpoint, from me being the chair of the policy, I greatly appreciate Wendy, and she's done a fabulous job, her and her staff. So just can't speak highly of it. I don't. Is that conflict of interest? Okay. Well, anyway, getting into what I'm supposed to be talking about. We met, Policy and Procedure Program Committee met on April 14th. We had to meet on some rework. Primarily, we had to relook at the allocation plan that David's going to get into right now. And we actually did approve this plan that you're going to see from David here in a second to actually come before the board. But at the same time, I do have to commend David before he starts into this and their team, because again, when you're having to cut and reallocate, it ain't the best thing, because somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser. So with that, Chairman Denham, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. All right. Well, Barry, thank you and your committee for your hard work and your effort. And I second the comments about Wendy and her staff. They do an excellent job. As all the staff at Kentucky Housing.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
Okay, David, give one last shot.
All right. Well, for this agenda item, it's agenda item approval of an amendment to the 2023-2024 state qualified allocation plan for the low-income housing tax credit program. I have a presentation just to kind of walk us through a little bit about how we've arrived at this point. I will note, KHC is required to have a tax allocation, qualified allocation plan, or as we refer to it commonly, QAP, by the tax code. It sets forth criteria and establishes the process by which KHC selects projects and allocates housing credit and monitors compliance of eligible low-income rental developments. What KHC typically does is we can create a qualified allocation plan for a 2-year period, and that comes before the board for approval, and then we'll go to the governor's office for sign-off. And we have that in place for 2 years. We're coming back to the board at this point because we're about to enter our 2nd year under the qualified allocation plan, and we would like to make some adjustments to it. So with that, I'll kind of go through this presentation and give you a little bit of background as to why we're doing that. As Wendy alluded to, we have been responding to these two disasters, Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky. So, as you all know, the Western Kentucky tornadoes occurred in December of 2021. At that point, KHC began looking at what our multifamily housing solutions could be with developers. From a multifamily program side of things, we realized there is a large loss of units, and multifamily housing would be needed to restore a large portion of that market. So we began working through that with our developers at that time. Solutions began to center around using tax-exempt bonds. Throughout 2022 and 2023, KHC has worked with the Department of Local Government on how we might leverage their expected Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funds with our tax-exempt bonds. We continue to work with DLG in response to public feedback to ensure that there is sufficient gap funding available for Western Kentucky recovery efforts. DLG recently published a substantial amendment to their action plan with respect to the CDBG DR funds and the amount that they are allocating towards new construction of multifamily housing, as well as an increase in amount that can be applied for each project. So that's the latest on where things stand with Western Kentucky. That occurred, and then, of course, these conversations are taking place, and as we all know, we then had flooding occur in July of 2022 in Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is a different market when it comes to housing than Western Kentucky. We have had some success with tax-exempt bonds in Western Kentucky. We have not had that same success in Eastern Kentucky, again, because it is a different market. And so, as we started thinking about multifamily housing development solutions in Eastern Kentucky, we turned our attention to the 9% program. 9% low-income housing tax credits could offer a solution in Eastern Kentucky. Our thought was that to ensure that we are targeting housing credits toward that region, those hardest hit regions, we would create a set-aside to do so. And so in order to do that, the way our qualified allocation plan is set up, as we have certain pools, we would need to amend that to adjust those pools to create that Eastern Kentucky set-aside. So that's a little bit about of the background as to why we were taking this approach and requesting an amendment to the QAP. So the steps we've taken to date, we like to stay in tune with our developer community. They're the ones that make these projects happen and utilize our resources to do so. On March 9th, we held a developer forum to discuss the tax-exempt bond and CDBG DR funds to address Western Kentucky, and what our proposed changes were to the QAP to address Eastern Kentucky. A few weeks later, we held a legally required QAP public hearing and open public comment period, again, with a large developer presence to hear what we were proposing. That public comment period closed on March 31st. We did receive a number of comments from the public, and in the weeks after that, we reviewed those, we considered those, we had discussions with various parties who had made comments. One thing that came out of those discussions, what we had originally proposed was eliminating something which you'll see here in a slide or two. We have something called an innovation pool in our qualified allocation plan, in which we attempt to, there are at times projects that might not score well based on our criteria, and what we attempt to do is create an innovation pool in which those projects that don't score well, that might have a very high impact that doesn't quite fit into the box, present that innovative element to us so that we can consider it and make an award to those projects where it's deemed fit. So what we had originally proposed initially was to eliminate that innovation pool this 1 year and target those funds toward Eastern Kentucky. Based on the feedback of the developers, and the community at large, we heard a lot of input that innovation pool is very important to a lot of people, and they find it very important to the process. And so what we did at that point, what we presented, as Barry mentioned, to the KHC Programs and Policy Committee was a slightly tweaked QAP amendment in which we did not eliminate the innovation pool, we simply reduced it a small amount, along with our other pools, a small amount, so that we create an Eastern Kentucky set-aside pool, but also retain our innovation pool. So going forward, the next steps, if approved by the board today, would be to obtain the sign-off from the governor of the revised QAP amendment. As I mentioned, he has to sign off on the QAP itself, so he would have to sign off on this amendment. And then on May 15th, we would open these LifeTech applications utilizing this amended QAP. And then to kind of finish things off, this is not related to the QAP, but related to our approach with Western and Eastern Kentucky. While we were intending to open the bond NOFA that would be paired with CDBG-DR funds for Western Kentucky recovery around the same time in May, due to the comments received and the need for additional funds, along with other reasons, a substantial amendment to the action plan for those CDBG-DR funds has been made available for public comment. So that bond NOFA will be delayed a bit and is likely to open in July or August. So that's the process going forward. I think the next slide I can show you the key changes. I've touched on the Eastern Kentucky pool set aside. You might be asking, well, what is Eastern Kentucky? We are targeting those funds for that set aside for the hardest hit counties based on housing loss. Those are Breathitt, Fletcher, Knott, and Perry counties. We do expect this pool to create more and more multifamily projects in the region. An additional change we are making to the QAP through this amendment, which I haven't spoken to, it's not really relevant to the background of Eastern and Western Kentucky disasters, is when we created this 2-year QAP last year when it was approved, we tweaked our scoring slightly to incentivize use and development of disadvantaged businesses and having them participate in our 9% credit round. Having gone through one of these rounds with those changes, we feel that some tweaks were necessary to that language to try to actually further implement what we are actually seeking to do, which is bring more disadvantaged businesses into the process, develop those disadvantaged businesses more, and so we've tweaked that language as well, and that you can see that in the materials provided. But really, what we're trying to do is ensure that disadvantaged businesses that are simply related entities to participating developers that are already in the mix are not getting the points. That's not our goal, is to bring these related entities to someone who's already participating. We want new entities. We're going to be developing new entities. And also, we don't want this to simply be a paper exercise where people are simply tacking on. We want those disadvantaged business entities materially participating and gaining capacity to where they can grow their understanding and be more involved in this process, in this industry. So those are the changes that have taken place. Here's a breakdown of the pools and how we came to create the Eastern Kentucky New Supply Pool. You can see at the top, what we intend to do is apply of the tax credits that we expect to get. This number at the bottom, the total, is 11.65 million. That's an estimate of what we expect to get. Again, this was created in the past, so we won't actually know our exact allocation until next year. But we're going to break this down based on percentages. So we've created an Eastern Kentucky New Supply Pool, which will utilize 12% of the tax credits. We shaved about 5% off of our preservation pool, 2% off of our new construction pool, and 5% off of our innovation pool. So we were able to retain that innovation pool, created an Eastern Kentucky New Supply Pool, and do that by only slightly adjusting some of our other pools. Maximizing Outcomes Pool and the Nonprofit Permanent Supportive Housing Pool, very small to start with, and those were not adjusted. So that is the adjustment to the QAP. I'm happy to answer any questions. I will kind of give the typical spiel that I'll end with, which is that we recommend the Board of Directors pass a resolution approving this amendment to the 2023-2024 State Qualified Allocation Plan be effective for awards of housing credits made on or after January 1st, 2024, and if so approved, QAP Amendment will be forwarded to the Governor of the Commonwealth for his endorsement and signing. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
So David, let me understand. So if we approve this, this goes to the governor's office for their review and approval, right?
Correct.
And then it is publicized
Correct.
before it actually goes into effect. Is that correct?
Correct. And we have actually already posted this on our website and sent an e-gram out to the community to let them know that this is the draft proposal. As it currently stands, the prior version had also been publicized on the website, but now that we've made these adjustments after the public comment period, we put this version out there as well for the public to see.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
No.
I'm sorry, did
I just anticipate any more changes to this.
I just want to say the staff worked really hard to accommodate, I'm the nonprofit representative, the nonprofits, and DLG. Thank you. Thank you. You are making this effective and making the housing possible by the proposed changes you've just published. So that's the level of cooperation. That was really fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members have any comments or questions for David here? So,
I'll make a motion.
all right, we have a motion by Ms. Burton and a second by Ms. Inco to approve this. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Gage, thank you. Okay, so we're down to informational items and an overview of the Rural Housing Trust Fund. I'm going to turn it over to Winston at this point. Winston, we appreciate everything you do, and I appreciate everything you do to help me.
Well, we have a mutual admiration society here, and we certainly appreciate everything that Mike has done to support Kentucky housing. He's been a tremendous chairman, and we have and look forward to continue to work with Mike in the years to come. But focusing on the Rural Housing Trust Fund, Wendy has already briefly given you an overview of that, and we covered it also fairly briefly in a letter to you all that we sent out about April the 4th, which discusses and sort of outlines HR 360. And HR 360 did a lot of different things, but basically, in terms of what I'm speaking to now, it created a rural housing trust fund, which we had not had before, and it funded the Rural Housing Trust Fund with $10 million for East Kentucky and $10 million for West Kentucky. And while the Act refers to this as a Rural Housing Trust Fund, it is really focused upon the areas that have been hit by the tornadoes in the west and the flooding in the east. So you can call it a Rural Housing Trust Fund, or you can call it a disaster trust fund, however you wish to look at it, but as a practical matter, it's focused on disaster recovery. And so we're eager to get that trust fund up, funded, and the funds going out the door to create housing for the citizens who in eastern Kentucky and western Kentucky who have been adversely affected by these disasters. Wendy and her team have been hard at work already trying to take existing programs that we have and adjust them, tweak them, change them to be possible vehicles to programs in which we can get the funding out as soon as the funding becomes available. We don't have those ready yet. It requires some additional work before they can be ready and be out there. But also, there's another step that those will have to go through, which they'll have to be reviewed and we'll seek the advice of what has also been created by House Bill 360, which is the Rural Housing Advisory, Rural Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee. And that's a new committee, a committee similar to what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee does. And that committee, by statute, will consist of the Commissioner of Agriculture as chair, 2 members which will be appointed by the Senate, or 2 senators by the President of the Senate, and 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the House. So that's the first 5, and then there will be 6 other additional citizens that will be named, and they will be named by a vote either of this Kentucky Housing Corporation Board of Directors, or depending upon the timing and the circumstances, the Executive Committee of the Kentucky Housing Board of Directors. We are uncertain as to the timing of how these pieces are going to fit together right now, but we do have a desire to get this up and running as quickly as we can, and whether or not we come back with a recommendation and a call for a vote on those advisory committee questions by the full board, or whether we do it by executive committee, really is going to be a function of what we can make work best from a timing perspective in order to get the full committee in place so that they can review the programs that we are going to propose and the manner in which we are going to propose that the funds for Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky can be used. So you will be hearing more about the membership on the advisory committee and our input on that, either by way of a notice to the executive committee or a notice to that's on the agenda for a full board meeting as these things develop. I think that really covers the major points I wanted to raise about the Rural Housing Trust Fund and its importance. I mean, it really is important because these are the first funds that the Kentucky Housing Corporation has had that have been really set aside or made available for disasters, uniquely for disasters. Anything else that we spent or done to date has come out of our normal operating funds, which splits in a way our loyalties to the existing programs that we have and the programs that we think that are necessary to be responsive to the disasters. You know, we wish the funding for each of these trust funds had been greater, but if we're successful in deploying those funds and if they can be deployed effectively, perhaps the legislature in its wisdom will deem to appropriate more money to allow us to do more things in that nature in the future. We will be continuing to work with DLG and the rest of state government on dealing with the disaster relief funds, which come from the federal government, not from the state government. And of course, we're hopeful that those programs will provide a lot of needed assistance to the people that have been adversely affected by the disasters. Any questions or comments or thoughts about either the Rural Housing Trust Fund or the advisory committee that we will be nominating members for? Okay, the last item that I have on the agenda is a bit of an announcement. To some of you all, this is not going to come as a surprise, but to others of you, it will come as a surprise. I am very pleased to announce that effective August 31st or September 1st, as the case may be, Tracy Thurston, over here, Tracy, wave your hand or stand up, will become our new Chief Financial Officer and Deputy Executive Director in charge of financial operations. And Jim Statler, which I'm not going to ask you to stand up because Jim's been standing up for so long that everybody knows Jim. But he can wait. So Jim is going to become a senior advisor to us, to the Kentucky Housing Corporation, for financial matters and working with us on some strategic projects that we have underway and will continue to have underway. And will continue to be a resource to Tracy and to the rest of us in terms of guiding us into the future and maintaining our financial health. I'm not going to make any long speeches today. We'll save that for yet another meeting yet to come, because Jim's not leaving us until his current position, not leaving his current position until the 31st of August. Until then, he is the CFO, and that's where I get my money, so I better be respectful of that. Jim, until the 31st, will be in that position, and then, as I said, will become a senior advisor to all of us on this. And will continue, importantly, to be a resource for all of us. I think certainly for myself, who've been associated with the Kentucky Housing Corporation for the last 3 years, he is the person that I look to know that, we're headed in the right direction, and that, our sails are full, and the rudder's where it needs to be, and he has provided us with that security and comfort in all of our endeavors. And again, I'm not going to fill his ego and say all the things that I could say about him today. I'll save that for a future day. But Jim, it's obviously what you've done for the corporation has been marvelous, and it's greatly appreciated. And to Tracy, we know that you can, I don't know that you can fill Jim's shoes, but you can certainly do the job that Jim's been doing. And we look forward to working with you and having the same kind of confidence in you as we've had in Jim on a going forward basis. So we're making that announcement to the board. The word leaks out on these things, and some people may know, but we're going to be making a press release later today or tomorrow, so it'll go out to all of our partners, and the world in the housing world, the affordable housing world, will be abuzz about all this. But we want to make that all this information known to you all first here today. So those are Mr. Chairman, those are the 2 items I had.
Okay, thank you, Winston, and congratulations, Tracy, and thank you, Jim. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, watching Jim these last couple of years, I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your efforts. So now we come to the point in the meeting where we open it up to the board. If any of the board members or the staff have anything they want to talk about or discuss, anybody have anything you want to bring up or ask? Yes,
I do. I had a couple of the developers give me a call, and I didn't pass it along because we've had lots of things going on, but is there a reason that in the bylaws or whatever that we don't meet during the summer? And this is a developer question that came to me. Is there, other than the summer? I mean, I get
Maybe some of the folks who have been here longer than I have can offer any insight into this. I know the schedule that we're currently on is a schedule that we've been on since I've been associated with the board. I think the schedule was developed to try to fit with the various programs that we have. For example, with the 9% applications, we opened that program up in the fall, and then received the recommendations from staff on that in January, and then approved inducement resolutions, I think, in February. And so that meeting is sort of gets driven by that. Then we try to renew contracts, as you all have done here today, personal service contracts and other contracts that we're obligated to have renewed and have your all's input on in April and May. So unfortunately, when we get together again in May, we'll have some more of those contracts, as stimulating as they are, to review and to act on. And I think there just, hasn't been a pressing need for meetings in the summer, and I think also we recognize that different people have summer vacations at different times, and it's harder to get people together. We do meet the end of August, so it's the end of the summer, but not during the summer. That's the answer I can give. If anybody else can give any more insight to that.
I mean, my answer was, it's summer.
It's summer. Good answer.
Yeah, it's probably a good answer, yeah, right.
I suppose if there was something urgent, we could do a
Special
executive committee,
meeting.
a virtual meeting, something like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
respond to.
Well, that's my thought on it, and again, the executive committee is available, and they do have the authority under our bylaws to basically take any action that would be taken by the entire board in the absence of a scheduled board meeting or a special board meeting.
Thank you.
It's a good question, I've wondered that myself.
On board meetings in general, I mean, I think we end up having generally 6 meetings a year of the full board. And of course, for the last couple of years, they've been virtual in their entirety. We have been talking among ourselves and with Mike, and would welcome input from you all as time goes on as to what we should be doing in the future in terms of board meetings. I mean, I know there's a lot of value in us all being together. I also know that 6 meetings a year, particularly when people are coming from 4 Eastern Kentucky, and Chad, who's not with us, is coming from 4 Western Kentucky, it can be a burden and quite time consuming. So we've thought about perhaps doing a mixture of virtual meetings and in-person meetings, and perhaps doing three meetings a year in person, much like today where we get together in time to have lunch and visit with each other and have to be able to do a full business day, and then the other 3 perhaps doing them virtually where you don't have that downtime and traveling, and you can do them in and out and be much more efficient about that. So if you have thoughts on that, share them with us, Kathy.
I'd say do a poll and have the next board meeting, that's approved. I bet most people here would say, yeah, 3 in person and 3 Zoom are fine.
Yeah. Is it possible to offer just an option to go Zoom with each meeting?
I've got some, our technology people exploring the possibility, you're talking about doing a combo where some people attend in person and some people attend. It's not as easy as you would think given our current technology. And as a matter of fact, Sam and Sarah and myself and 2 of our technology people and Molly met over here 2 weeks ago, and we tried to simulate what we would need to do if we had some people here and some people someplace else. And under both our bylaws and what we understand to be the legal requirements of being able to basically see people when they cast their vote, the difficulty, for example, voting and seeing each other's faces as we vote is difficult when you're going back and forth. And we're also concerned about the talking over each other, that we do it here in person, and it would certainly would occur more if we did it with a combination. I have asked the people in IT, and John's area is under him, to take a look at some new technology that's out there that I've recently received some advertisements on doing just that, and so we'll continue to explore that, because I think there would be something to be said for that, and if there's a way to do it, I'd like to have that option. So particularly as people that maybe had good intentions of being here, and then at the last minute had something coming up, that they could come up that prevents them from making the trip, but they could nevertheless participate in the meeting.
Right. Yeah, well, the technology's out there. A lot of organizations have been doing that. I was at the chamber this morning, and they use a thing called the OWL. You might want to look into that.
Well, hopefully we're looking into the existing technology we have would not make it easy, and would perhaps make the meetings not only longer but more tedious. But we will explore that and get back with you.
Okay, anyone else? Anything you want to talk about? Okay, just let me say again to the staff, thank you for your hard work. And the ladies that prepared the meal, Sarah, I think you were involved in that. At least tell them thank you for and especially because it was healthy, okay? Which is important to me. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
No move.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.